Well, it finally happened. The Detroit Lions have defeated the Seattle Seahawks in a football game for the first time in what feels like forever. Welcome in to the Payne and Drain Show. I'm your host, Zach Payne. With me is my co host, Alex Drain. And Alex, this was one that you had circled on the calendar. How are you feeling now that the Lions have pulled off a victory against Seattle?
Well, I would have liked it to be a little more crisp defensively when that was sort of the narrative coming into this week's game and really another crack at the Seahawks. But hey, a win's a win. 27 points is fewer than the last 2 years against this team. So incremental progress, I guess. And I actually hadn't realized it had been 12 years since they beat Seattle. I knew my issue with this game was built around the Campbell era in the last few years, but man, it'd been a long time, I guess. That is a long time ago since that was Russ Wilson's, I believe, first season in Seattle when the last Lions win happened over this team. So I'll take the win any way we can get it, and 3-1 at the bye week feels pretty good overall.
Yeah, and we'll talk about where the Lions stand at the bye week a little bit later. But to start with, we'll start with the good in the offense, which suddenly came to life against this Seattle secondary that had been hailed as one of the best in the league. And Jared Goff is the main storyline coming out of this game. A perfect 18 of 18. He actually just got announced he won NFC Offensive Player of the Week, which no surprise there, given how, well, rare of a performance this was. In fact, it was historic. Jared Goff was the first player to pass for over 200 yards and have every single pass be completed, and he's the has the new record for most completions in a game without an incompletion at 18. The previous was 10, set by Kurt Warner, I believe. What were your thoughts? I know that Goff had a lot of things going for him in this game in terms of run after the catch and play design, whatever, but what were your thoughts on Goff as a whole?
Well, this is what we needed to see. I think those first 3 weeks, Goff's performance was kind of the big storyline. I think the Lions obviously would be 4-0 if they had had that Goff every single game, and some of the wins would have been a lot more comfortable as well. Certainly the first week would have too. So we needed to see him come online. We need a high level play from Goff in order to go deep in the playoffs like they want to do. So this is the big story, and I think you saw it pretty early in this game. I think it was the first play of the second drive. They go three and out on the first one. Second drive, there's a blitzer coming in. Goff like spins out of it, steps up, hits JMO over the middle for a contested catch, and that was just a good sign. I felt like because that was him handling pressure much better than we'd seen, and I think he handled the pocket much better than we'd seen in recent weeks, stepping up, feeling pressure, throwing despite rushers in his face when that was necessary. Seemed like the vision was better. The accuracy was pretty darn good. Not a lot of negative in this game. It looked much more comfortable, much more locked into this offense than we'd seen at any point in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, and that opening or the first completion of the second drive there where he's like doing a 360 in the pocket, that's the type of stuff that Collinsworth would drool over if it was Mahomes, right? Like
Right, right.
but no, the only times that I had grievance with Goff handling pressure were the sacks and the safety at the end of the game, where it seemed like he could have gotten the ball off, but the pressure made him throw it to someone else. I think there was also on the the second drive after the 3-0, or it even might have been the 3-0, where Goff like rolled out and there was pressure, so he checked it down instead of hitting an open Amon on a crosser. But I mean, small grievances because at the end of the day, he was great. And I think what this game proves and what this performance by Goff proves is when Goff is on, the Lions offense is the best in the league. There's not a team that would stop them. The Seahawks have some of the best corners in the league in, Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon and even Kobe Bryant out there too. And the Lions made them look like very average because no matter what, there was always a guy open. They couldn't contain Jameson Williams' speed. They couldn't stop Amon over the middle. They could not tackle Sam Laporta or David Montgomery out of the backfield. It was literally perfect. And overall, there's not a whole lot to say that's negative about the offense. There's a couple of small grievances that we had, like in game theory, especially a 3rd and 1 toss. But the run game was solid. The offensive line without Frank Ragnow looked good, especially on the interior, looked good. And I thought, especially Monty and Gibbs, both were doing their thing in the run game. I know Montgomery's average is a little bit lower in this game, but he was still like, he's just going to wear the defense down every time he touches the ball.
Yeah, all the weapons were online in this game, and that's where Goff gets the credit and sort of facilitating the whole unit and making sure the ball was being distributed, everything was on schedule, but all the players were executing at a really high level in this game. Gibbs, I thought, hit the holes pretty well, a lot of acceleration, got what you needed from him. David Montgomery, everyone's going to talk about the Beastquake sort of run that he had, which was really catching a screen pass and then just trampling tacklers all the way down the field. That's his highlight, but that first touchdown he scored was really impressive too. He gets hit in the backfield and just drags the guy, and he puts that hand down on the turf to get the extension with the ball over the goal line. Just really an excellent game from both the running backs, but it was great to see that going, and they got a lot of help from the offensive line too. I thought that the rushing game was strong up front. Not a lot of issues there. Again, there were a couple pass pro things, but at least on the ground, they were mauling the Seahawks, especially on that first touchdown drive, or the second drive of the game. That was excellent.
Yeah, and the big thing for me too is the every time that the offense needed to score, they did.
Yep.
Every time it seemed like the Seahawks might be crawling back into this game, the offense went out and they got another touchdown. There was the drive, I think it was 28-20 when or no. There was one drive when the Seahawks made it a one score game, and then the Lions they go down the field on the Beastquake Montgomery run, and then they hit a trick play to Goff in the end zone, which we're gonna have to talk about. And then there was another one where it was like 28-20, and then first play Jameson Williams 70 yards gone.
Well,
And
honestly, the worst thing you can say about the offense, perhaps in that phase of that stretch of the game, was that they scored too soon there.
yeah,
That the Jameson Williams 7-yard touchdown ended up hurting the defense because they had gone on a long defensive drive, and then they had to go right back out there because the Lions were scoring too quickly. So it was a good problem to have.
yeah, and it's kind of the opposite problem we had been having. Like, if you're going to score too quickly, I'd much rather that problem than the run, pass, three and outs that we had been getting in the third quarters all year. So, but going back to that, the Goff receiving touchdown, because I remember Amon Ra on his podcast, the St. Brown Bros podcast, he talked about that he wanted to be the third quarterback if there was ever an emergency, and Jared Goff was on the show and said, "You're never going to be the third quarterback. You like I've seen you throw," and to have that, it's a fun play to be able to have St. Brown throw. Honestly, that was like a perfect throw over the defender with perfect arc, and it was a play that they said had been in the playbook for years, and it was fun to see them bust it out.
What was fun about that play, honestly, was that it really had to be executed down to a T in order for it to work out because the idea that trick play, and the genre of that trick play, is that you get the quarterback wide open because no one on the defense is going to pick up on the quarterback running a route. That the quarterback gives it off and they're like, yeah, he's out of the play. Okay. And especially when you run it with a Jared Goff as the quarterback, right? They, generally speaking, you expect the defense to lose interest in the quarterback if it's Jared Goff when he no longer has the ball. But that edge, or maybe he was an outside linebacker, I don't know really what he was. He was engaged in a block, number 50 for Seattle. And he sees Goff trotting by him and he picks it up. He's like, oh, wait a second. He's running the trick play. And he goes after him and he's in really good position to make a play on that ball. We got covered perfectly, and it had to be a dime to be a touchdown, and it was. That was a heck of a throw from Amon-Ra on that play. So credit Seattle, but credit Amon-Ra. Great throw. Much better throw than you see on most trick plays that involve a non-quarterback passing.
Yeah, and I think to the fact that so many of these style of trick plays have been stopped in the NFL in recent years because it's kind of become the gimmick that every defense is kind of keyed in on. Like, hey, once in a while, like once a year, you'll probably face some sort of weird play like this, especially when you're playing like the Chiefs, for example. I know that they've tried to throw it to Patrick Mahomes a few times. And so to see the Lions execute it at this level and actually have it work out is nice, because you would hate to see them try to pull something fancy out and then it doesn't work out, and like heaven forbid there's an interception on the play because it's telegraphed. But to the Lions' credit and Ben Johnson's credit, they pulled it out at a perfect time and it worked out flawlessly. Um, yeah, like what is some other plays or drives that you want to highlight offensively?
Well, I think a big storyline for me coming out of this game, Tim Patrick, 2 catches, both pretty good chunk gains. One of them is more of a catch and run where he goes down the sideline for a decent gain. Then he's got that strike over the middle, which was really a great throw from Goff. We're still early into the season, but at this point, I think we can sort of say that as long as the health holds up, he looks pretty plausible as a wide receiver 3 in terms of evolving into the new Josh Reynolds. He's still building chemistry with Goff, still rather new to the offense and all that sort of stuff. But as the year goes along, based on what we're seeing only a few weeks in, he's surpassed my expectations, honestly. Like we were discussing preseason, when would he be on the roster? Or maybe he joins it after the bye week. He joined it quickly and it's really fitted in. And those were 2 very useful catches. His blocking has looked good. I think that's a really encouraging development so far in the season.
Yeah, in our defense, we did not foresee so many injuries opening up roster spots for him to get signed, which is probably the reason he's been signed to the active roster at this point. But yeah, he's been solid, and I think it's really helpful for Goff. You know, we had a long conversation, like as a fandom, about Jameson Williams a few years ago, and it's like how he needs to build chemistry with Goff, and it's a little bit harder when it's a speedster and your every throw is downfield and there's a lot less room for error. With Tim Patrick, he's such a big body receiver, and most of his routes have been in that short to intermediate range where Goff has a much larger target to hit, and there's a lot. Not that there's a lot more room for error, but there is some room for error. Where if Goff misses the throw by a couple of inches, then Patrick has the frame to at least move around and make the catch and make adjustments. And I think what you're going to see is, even if their chemistry isn't perfect, all those kind of underneath throws are going to be there because Patrick has been really good on these drag routes and just picking up extra yards because the defense isn't keying in on him. So I think he's going to be a solid wide receiver 3. And now that Allen Robinson is also on the 53-man roster, I think the worst case scenario is if the injuries do linger for Patrick, at least Robinson is going to be acclimated because he's going to be in practice, he's going to be catching passes, he's going to know the system. So the Lions should have an X receiver like set for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and that's a big improvement from a training camp where they cycled through a lot of bodies and really nothing popped, and it was looking pretty grim at one point. So to get that kind of shored up by the bye week is a good sign. I liked that. The JMO deep cross touchdown just deserves a little bit deeper of a mention. I mean, just a great play, and that's exactly what you go back to when he was drafted and coming off the injury and then the suspension. We talked about ways to use JMO, and that's like the perfect one. Other than running go routes to move the safeties back and clear out space for Laporta or Amon-Ra, the JMO deep cross is the route that you have to run with him, because if you put it in the perfect spot and it was a great throw from Goff, if it's a little bit off, he gets tackled, I think, by Witherspoon, who was right there, but it leads him right in stride. He's able to turn the corner. And it was just a great play to watch because you're sitting there, and I was watching with my brother, and he makes a throw and JMO catches it. And I'm like, oh, that might be 6. And then they zoom out, and all of a sudden you see there are no Seahawks deep. There's no deep safety. And then my brother's like, it is 6. And it's just really an electric play. It would have been great to be in the building for that one. I imagine the fans were in a frenzy. But that ability to just sort of take any throw the distance, if the circumstances are right or if one tackle is blown, is really the whole theory of why you draft him. And now we've seen, at least in 3 of the 4 games, at least one 30, 40 plus yard completion to JMO. To see that explosiveness, to see it come online, I think through 4 weeks, the JMO breakout is looking pretty good at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, this is exactly the type of situation too, right? Like the Seahawks dial up a zero blitz and the Lions have that crosser, you hit JMO, and it's the ability to just turn a game on its head in a situation where the Seahawks have the momentum, they're coming back, and then literally one play And it's not even like the Seahawks necessarily did anything wrong. It's just the fact that their coverage had the middle a little opened up, and Jameson Williams turns the corner on Witherspoon, who's not facing the right way, just because why would he be running that way? And it's gone. And I did love that Jameson Williams is so fast that he made that place go so quick, but he was celebrating from like the 30-yard line.
Yeah,
He's just
he was high stepping down the sideline there.
and JMO has really become a fan favorite in Detroit just because he's got that kind of like a bit of a kid energy, right? And he's high stepping into the end zone, and then he does a dunk on the uprights for Calvin Johnson and picks up a taunting flag for that. Shout out Jake Bates for making the long PAT, but it's just as much as you can criticize that and be like, well, he's got to be smarter there. He just seems to really embrace being the fun kid in the city, and he really seems to love it.
Yeah, he's a guy from St. Louis, I believe, originally, but of all the Lions in this current roster, outside of like a local guy like Aiden Hutchinson, he seems to have sort of embraced or done the most work to reach out and really embrace the market because he was at Tiger game, I think last week, one of the crucial push for the playoff games. He's been at Red Wings games. He talks about it sort of in the locker room after the games. I mean, just really has fit in and tried to become one with the locals in a way that few other players have. And I think now with him performing, that's made him one of the most popular guys on the team. And that's a really nice development to have. And I think when you zoom out and remember all the stuff that happened before this season, the injury he came in with, and the gambling issue, then the many drops and all that discussion to get to this point is really just a great story and a great turnaround.
Yeah, and I remember when he was first drafted, and people were immediately like, "Oh, why doesn't he look happy to be here? Look
Oh
how
yeah.
miserable he looks." Like everyone has always found a reason to be upset about Jameson Williams over the past few years, and it's so nice that his breakout is happening and that the city's fully embracing him. And he any doubters that he does have left, he's quickly silencing with his play. And I mean, he had a down game last week, but that's going to happen because again, there's a lot of weapons here. There's a lot of mouths to feed. Not everyone can always get their share. This week they did actually, which was nice to see, but that's not going to be the case every game. So for what it's worth, nice to see that. Do you have any negatives you want to talk about on offense?
Um, one more just quick recognition. Sam Laporta had a nice little juke and drew a face mask on that, and
He
then they
ran right through
ran,
it.
yeah, and then they ran a sort of a slip screen to him later that got a nice chunk. So it seemed like they wanted to sort of get the ball in his hands and then just see what he can do in the open field. I thought that was a good game for him. On the negative side, Taylor Decker allows a horse collar sack, which that just merits brief discussion. That it's very funny that you can not touch the quarterback in any situation. That, come in 1 second after the ball is thrown and you tap Kyler Murray and he goes flying 15 yards and all of a sudden it's a sack. And then, a roughing the passer call. None of that's allowed. But if he's in the pocket, horse collar him all you want. That's I don't really understand the logic of it. I get the idea that you need ways to let the defenders get sacks. I got nothing wrong with that. But when you've outlawed so many other things about quarterback contact to then let an open loophole about horse collaring the QB, it's just very funny development. The crowd didn't like it, but turns out that is in the rule book.
Yeah, and I do remember there was one. I think it was 2 years ago when the Lions and Cowboys played, and Hutchinson got Prescott with one of those like horse collar style tackles. I was like, that seemed a little close. I actually did not know that that was outlawed in the rule book, but or like allowed in the rule book
Yeah,
rather.
yeah.
And it's I don't know. I will say Decker hasn't been his best season so far. You can kind of see maybe slowing down a little bit. We talked about this with Graham, maybe slowing down a little bit. I thought Graham actually had a pretty good game at center. I will say that. But Decker, I don't know. I think this is just one of those games. Like he's gonna allow a handful of
Yeah,
sacks every year.
he's been solid this year, but There's just been like one bad rep a week that's kind of been the issue for him.
Yeah.
I didn't notice Glasgow or Awasika in like a negative way at all. Zeitler is the one on the hook for the safety sack, but then that whole debacle is more a play calling situation that can be discussed. Beyond that, I don't think I had anything else really negative. There were just the two Ben Johnson calls that I was kind of annoyed by, but I thought it was a pretty good game from him, and the players executed at a very high level, and you can't really argue with the results.
Yeah, I mean the Lions had like 50 offensive plays, 51 offensive plays, and scored 42 points.
Yeah.
That's you can't really argue with that. It's just a pretty outstanding day. Yeah. Any other notes on the offense?
Should we handle the Ben Johnson stuff right now while we're on the topic of the offense?
We might as well. So two calls that were annoying, I guess, more so than outright negative. It's just kind of Ben Johnson getting a little too cute. We'll start with the 3rd and 1 toss. I don't. Do you? What was the situation? I don't remember the time in
Was
the game.
3rd and 1. This is the drive. This was the one drive where they didn't get the touchdown after trading scores in the second half, because this leads to the drive where Seattle gets decently far and then ends up having to punt. It was 13 and a half minutes remaining in the contest. 3rd and 1 from the Detroit 39. They run a sort of toss to the field, and it goes nowhere. And I think it loses a couple yards, and they end up punting. I dislike this one simply because David Montgomery, you want just a north-south runner and to just pound it forward. And you've had a lot of success running between the tackles in this game. It just was a sort of finesse team sort of play. And the Lions
Mhm.
are more of a smash mouth team sort of team. And this game, again, you've had a lot of success just slamming it in their face. And when you got Montgomery, who you generally feel like can drag a tackler forward for an extra yard or two, all you really got to do is not have the play entirely bust if you run between the tackles, and you feel pretty good about your ability to convert it. Whereas you're tossing the ball out, now you need the blockers to hit their blocks in space. You have the potential for safeties and corners to come flying down and meet him well in the backfield like they did. I just think don't get cute there and just shove it forward and move the sticks.
Yeah, my problem isn't so much with the personnel on that play. It's more just the concept of a toss. And I think we've talked about it before where the toss is just a very risky play. And that's not a 3rd and 1 play. If it's 2nd and 1, sure, go for it. But 3rd and 1, when you just need a yard, I'd rather see it go north south or even just sneak it with Goff. Like you don't need to get fancy. The Seahawks are a finesse team, and the Lions had been bullying them all day physically, which is funny. I don't know if you saw the Seahawks clip about them saying the Lions aren't tough before the game, but you like just rush it down their throats. What are they going to do? They can't stop it. They hadn't proven they can stop it at all. Just run up the middle with Montgomery. He will run over a defender. Or even if you want to, like, you can do Gibbs between the tackles too. Gibbs was having a phenomenal day. Like, it's a little too cute and it's too risky of a play for that situation. I will, like, save the tosses for 2nd downs.
Yeah, the other one I didn't like is the play call that leads to the safety. So the argument from a game theory standpoint here is there's 2 minutes and I think 5 seconds remaining, or maybe 2:09, something like that. The argument is if you get down a 2 minute warning, then there's no penalty for passing the ball because it's a free play anyway. Let's say you get an incomplete pass at 1:59, the clock was going to stop already, so it's not a time issue, which I agree with. Here's where I don't agree with it. You're at your own 3 yard line. You want to pass it in that situation on the 32? Sure, go ahead. But you don't do it on the 3 yard line, especially not play action, right? If you want to throw it in that situation, do a quick out, something like that, play action inherently takes longer because you have to do the fake, then the quarterback drops back, then he scans the field, then he makes a decision. I think that they may have gone play action because they wanted to drain enough time to ensure it was under 2 minutes. But that gives you time for your pass protection to break down. And we know Goff isn't mobile. We know he's not going to spin out of sacks. You're up 15 points. There's just 2 minutes left. Get the game over with. No need for this. And the safety caused a lot more stress. And there wasn't a ton of stress, but it just made it more complicated than it needed to be. Like, this is the end of the game. Just get it over with. There's no need for this in the 3 yard line. Run the ball and run the clock down and get out of this game.
Yeah, so there's kind of a defense of Ben Johnson would like, not that there really is one, but to his credit, Tim Patrick was open on the play. Like, he actually was wide open on the play. It's just Goff happened to be getting hit as he broke open. So the other thing though, okay, you're on your own 3 yard line, you want to pass for some reason. But why are the only routes on the field deep crossers, deep down 20 yards downfield? Why are we not giving Goff a check down? Why are we not giving him a safety valve to, if pressure breaks down, something to just avoid the safety? I don't care if you just leak out a running back to the sideline so Goff can throw it over his head. Just something. You cannot be like, we are not losing at that point in the game. What are you doing? Just, again, it's too cute. It's too cute.
Yeah, just overthinking it. Simplify it down. You're up late. Like, just get this game over with. No need for that.
Yeah, exactly. So with that said, moving on to the defense, which is a little bit of a more complicated discussion. We'll start with again the positive. I thought the interior defensive line had a great game. They when the Seahawks ran the ball inside, for the most part, it was stuffed. There was a couple late in the game that Ken Walker was able to break, but for the most part, the interior run defense was once again elite. The interior pressure was incredible all game, and it was constantly forcing the pocket back and putting Gino under pressure. Ali McNeil and Levi Onwuzurike are big parts of that. I know DJ Reader got his first sack as a Lion as well, but the interior, those three were just. I don't know how much Makai Wingo played in this game, but I know that those three for sure were having great games.
Yeah, I think the biggest story for Seattle on the ground is in the second half, they stopped running between the tackles, really. It started to be all
Good idea.
pitches, sweeps, tosses, and they had success with it. And I think that's partially a nature of the personnel as well, not just the opponent they're facing, but Kenneth Walker's by far a better runner outside the tackles, where you can get him out there and his elusiveness and explosiveness can really do its thing. Because between the tackles, yeah, he can like run through a guy occasionally, but that's not his
He
biggest
can
strength.
somersault over a guy.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But when you get it out wide, then you can really let him do his thing. But it was also just the fact they're playing this Lions team. There really wasn't much running room up the gut. Good job for those guys. One big note I think overall to mention as we get into this segment is I think Geno Smith, especially upon reviewing the film a second time, played a great game.
Yeah.
A really good game. Like I went back and looked at some of those throws he made, and at the time it felt like, man, he's just picking us apart. But like I didn't think a lot of guys were that. There were issues in the zone where guys were open, but there were also some strikes over the middle where he was threading it through a fairly compact window where Lions linebackers weren't in a terrible position. And the way he was able to manipulate the pocket, throw on different platforms, move around, the Lions were getting some decent pressure and pressure that against other quarterbacks can phase them and produce sacks. And it wasn't happening today. I don't know what it is. Geno Smith just he lives to play in Ford Field. What else can you say, I guess? That building brings out the best in him.
Yeah, I really, it's a really bizarre case because the Lions did a great job of putting him under pressure, but I don't know, the poise that he showed was just incredible. His ability to kind of not overreact when he's rolling out and wait for someone to settle in the gap in zone coverage. He found Jackson Smith and Jigba a lot, just right at the sticks on it, where he would just sit down, wait for the corner to pass by a yard or two, and then Gino would hit him. Overall, like Gino, he threw the ball like 56 times in this game. It was all on his shoulders for the most part, and he kept them in the game. Like that, it was an incredible performance, and props to Gino for that because for whatever reason, he loves playing against Detroit, and he's always going to be Aaron Glenn's nemesis, I guess, which is a weird storyline, but it is what it is.
Yeah, so the Geno performance really colors the performance, and Kenneth Walker the third. The Lions had genuine issues tackling him, but we also have to note that he is a genuinely great running back. He hasn't necessarily established himself as a superstar in the NFL yet, but man, when you watch him play, he is a special talent for that sort of thing, and was really giving a lot of trouble to the corners and safeties and tackling in this game. And then he has wrestling situation with Alex Anzalone. I don't really know how else to describe that. I think there's a possibility that the crown of his helmet might have touched the ground when before he did the flip over, but it was kind of tough to tell. My only thing with that, honestly, is if you're going to allow a running back to do that kind of thing, I feel like you have to then give the defense more leeway to sort of suplex guys and the things that they throw flags on for unnecessary roughness, right? Like if the running back gets to wrestle around and flop around and you don't blow the whistle, to stop forward progress, the defense needs to be allowed to do a little bit more themselves because uh, you got to hold the guy down a long time and try to force him down before you blow that whistle. And I don't know, they don't seem to blow the whistle for forward progress as much as they used to, and it creates those situations. And credit Kenneth Walker for getting out of it though.
Well, on that note, that kind of worked the opposite way a little bit later, where there was a play where Walker ran up the middle and he ran into the teeth of the defense, and a defender pushes him back a few yards, but they don't call forward progress. And
Yeah.
then it becomes a 6 yard loss. So it does kind of go both ways where the forward progress can work as a detriment. But that play, like, I don't know, the only real rule for offensive players is if you're not down, keep going.
Yep.
So credit to Walker. That was about the most creative way I've ever seen someone break a tackle. That was some stuff that like kids on the playground would try to do to break a tackle and like flipping over their friends at recess. I've never seen anyone even bother to attempt that in an NFL game. And like I don't even know what to say for Alex Anzalone there. Like you got him on the ground and he did a somersault over you. Like that it's such a one off that's never you're not gonna see that ever again this season. Like just credit to Ken Walker. And you know what, if you wanna say like, oh well, he should have wrapped up. You can't allow that to happen. Well, the Lions like they had three guys swarm on him for like it was a 3 or 4 yard gain after that, right? Like it didn't turn into a huge play. It's not something that turned into a touchdown. It's just something that was like, wow, that was really cool. Like credit to Walker for staying alive and keeping going there. But on Walker's performance as a whole, I think like he is definitely the fastest running back they've played so far. He is definitely the most dynamic, and I think what you saw in this game was the Lions. Anytime they had any issue in pursuit or had any angle that was just a little bit off, those mistakes were magnified because he has an ability similar to Jameer Gibbs where he makes one cut and all of a sudden he can go. He can just take off and run into the house. That 18, his third touchdown of the day, it was I think it was a little bit of a wide zone, and he cuts it up, and he just cuts it all the way back across the field to the opposite side of where the run was going. And the defense just, they all flood to that side, and they're all caught flat footed when he cuts back, and no one is able to catch him. That's just the ability he has. He's like, that's who he is as a running back. He has that one play ability to just take things to the house. And, it's just a good game from him. It For the Lions part of it, it's the first time that they've allowed 80 rushing yards from a running back since 2022 week 16 against the Panthers. So,
The Chuba Hubbard game.
yeah, where the Panthers had like 300 rushing yards. Like after that game, that's the first time. It's been over a year and a bit since the Lions have allowed 80 rushing yards to a running back. So, you know what? That's I'm okay with that. Like Walker can have a good game. Good for him. He at least showed the Lions defense that they're not invulnerable against the run. And, maybe it's something to work on going forward.
Yeah, I think the thing you can kind of be encouraged about, or at least take solace in, let's say, is that it felt kind of opponent related and related specifically to Kenneth Walker, whereas if your defensive line's getting like paved and then you're getting run all over like that Panthers game, that's a lot more concerning. There's only so many running backs in the entire NFL who have the ability to do what Kenneth Walker did in this particular game. And I think that his slipperiness, kind of combined with the mobile quarterback, combined with the talented receivers, is really what has given the Lions some trouble against this team. And that was the main source of issue in this game. You also had the fact that Seattle converted a number of sort of high leverage plays in this game. This drive didn't end up leading to a touchdown, but you get a 3rd and 16 more convoluted hook and ladder conversion. People are saying the copycat, but I'll give him credit. That one was an even weirder play with the full sort of throw across the field to set that up. Like Lions have that played pretty conventionally, and almost any other context, you get a stop there and you get a quick punt and you're off the field. And instead, they picked that one up, and I don't really know what to say about that. And then you have another play later where 3rd and 8 up 28-14, you get a free rusher to the quarterback. You don't make the sack. Like that's got to be made. And those are just some plays that allowed Seattle to keep driving down the field that need to be made and normally would be made, I think.
Yeah, and that 3rd and 16, you knew it, like watching the broadcast, everyone knew that that play was doomed for the Lions because it showed up on the broadcast that the Seahawks were over 18 in 3rd and 10 plus.
Yep.
That's never going to go your way as soon as that kind of stat shows up. But I don't know, it was like I think I've seen that play in the NFL level like once or twice in the last few years. It's not some like it's again it's something they just busted out of the playbook. It's hey, we desperately need a first down here. Let's just dial this up and see if it works. And I mean, it is a good play design because why would anyone think that the wide receiver is going to throw it, 20 yards to the sideline to the running back after that? Like it's a good play. So credit to them. I think another one I want to mention is I think it was a 4th and 2 that ends up getting called back because of the offensive pass interference on Tyler Lockett, where the Seahawks, it's like just the quick out. And that kind of, for me, in the moment, before I knew it was called back, it kind of highlighted a bit of a concern from this game is that the Lions were playing very far off with their corners in this game. They were routinely playing 7 or 8 yards off. And as a result, anytime that JSN or Lockett ran short underneath routes, they were available to them very quickly for Geno to kind of avoid pressure and just dump it off. We talked about this in week one, which sometimes I wish the Lions corners would just, well, especially with two safeties back, just step up and play closer to the line a little bit.
Yeah, they ran a lot more zone in this game than they had in previous weeks. And it felt like the execution of it was kind of so-so. The corners themselves had a kind of a up and down game. I think Carlton Davis's day merits its own discussion, going back and forth with DK Metcalf over and over again. Some really good reps, a couple pretty bad reps, some frustrating reps, and some ref talk to be had there. I didn't notice Robertson too much. Just a PBU, I think, on a big
Couple
third
good
and
tackles
three.
too.
Yeah, I think he missed one tackle that was a little frustrating. Terrion Arnold, didn't really notice him until further ref talk later in the game. But it really was to me just more of a story of Geno playing well slash Lions being just not quite super tight in the zone they were running. And I think definitely on some of those third downs should have been playing up on the line a little bit more and a little more aggressive in defending to try and get off the field.
Yeah, and I think it's more so like the zone coverage. The Lions they don't have the horses to run zone coverage anymore, right? Because they've switched their secondary out entirely to be running man. And, it is what it is. I think I don't know. The corners were fine, I thought, for the most part, but the penalties are definitely something that warrants discussion. So since there's really no way to avoid talking about the corners without talking about the refs, I'm gonna let you sound off because I know you fired off a few tweets about making defense legal again. Yeah, just go talk about pass interference.
Well, so first of all, the funniest thing about all this is I've been complaining for years about the manner in which there's been such a crackdown on corner play in the NFL. But the funniest thing is it hasn't necessarily led to soaring offenses in recent years. It did maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but we're now in an NFL where a lot of offenses in this league are completely inept. That no matter how many lifelines you give them, the quarterback play just continues to hold them back. And you can just scan through the league. I mean, to the Giants, to the Panthers, to almost everyone in the AFC South, to Miami Sans to New England, on and on and on. There's just so many teams that can't play offense in this league. So I guess the issue of the increasing criminalization of playing cornerback has not led to exactly what you might think. But overall, it's still frustrating when you watch a game with talented players because my biggest thing in this game, honestly, is that DK Metcalf is just such a whiner. I'm sorry. This dude is massive. He is really tall. He is really thick. He's extremely strong. You look at his body type, his physique. I mean, this dude should be just mossing guys and making great catches, and he's capable of it. But every time he doesn't, if he's even tapped, he gets up looking at the referee and just absolutely playing for the flags all the time. You get that deep ball where they call pass interference and like the 2 yard line or whatever. I mean, Carlton Davis comes around, he gets one little hand on the exterior of the shoulder just to sort of anchor himself a little bit while he goes, and he plays the ball. He plays the ball. He goes up and he PBUs it. Like, if he tackles the guy and drags him down, prevents him from making the play on the catch, but this is a 6 foot corner that is trying to just get a little bit of a reach up to be able to actually play the ball. DK, you're taller than this guy. You're stronger than this guy. You weigh more than this guy. Box him out and make the catch. Like, and he gets totally shoved in a locker there, and then he gets bailed out by the flag, and they keep doing this over and over in this game, and it just is really frustrating because if a corner makes a play on the ball and he's got his head turned around and he's going for it, let him play. If he's really impeding the guy and he's tackling him, right? The idea of DPI is when you bite on the double move and you're toasted, it's a touchdown. You come down and you just tackle the guy because you have to. That's fine. And that's what it should be for. But guys that are playing their position and are just a little physical, and the wide receiver isn't really making a play on the ball, isn't really trying to do it. I hate when guys play for flags. Same thing in the NBA. I hate when guys are playing to draw fouls and not
Shout
score
out
the
Joel
basket.
Embiid because that's what
Yeah,
DK Metcalf is. It's Joel Embiid syndrome, right? Where
it
it
is.
doesn't matter
It
how big you are,
completely
you're
is.
you're completely baiting for contact and flopping at the first wind of resistance.
It's extremely annoying to play him, and ref talk as a whole in this game was pretty bad. There was a lot of events, and then you
Very
have
involved.
very involved. They wanted to be a main character in this game. And Terry and Arnold gets hit with a flag that was completely phantom. You have that 2 point conversion. I don't even know what to describe it. A bizarre non-call flag on a. There's nothing there on the first one. Then the second one, there's more contact, but they don't throw it. Things got off the rails a few times, especially in the second half of this game, that made it kind of hard to parse what was going on.
So my problem with the pass interferences is just how inconsistent they were. Because we talk about how they throw a soft one on Carlton Davis while he's making a PBU. But then the one he actually tackled Metcalf on, kind of in the end zone, they don't throw. And then the 2 point conversion, this needs. I don't even know if this is the refs or the sky judge or whoever, but DK Metcalf, after like he gets interfered with, whatever, he makes the catch on the sideline. He gets his foot and his knee. It looked in bounds, and no one bothered to review it. No one bothered to call down and say, "Hey, you might want to take a look at this. This looks like it might be in." Seattle fans are up in arms about those two plays in particular, and it's funny because the Lions fans are up in arms about the ones that were called. But they don't have a problem with the ones that weren't called because they should have been called. But it was just weird. It seems like the refs had decided like, oh, we've thrown a lot, maybe we'll take a play off. And if that's gonna be the case, interfere every single play because then it's the whole like NHL playoff syndrome where it's well they can't call them all, so just do it.
Yeah.
Like Terrion got flagged for a couple that there was the one where he like lost his balance and the receiver like ran him over because of it, and they just kind of fall down together. That was a weird one. I don't even know what happened there, but like maybe you can like ding it for it because it looks like it's contact, but I don't know that it was just weird.
Yeah, and I think this is similar to what we said last week that specifically for Terrion, but honestly the flags for Carlton Davis too, they're not bad flags for the player themselves, right? These are not guys getting completely cooked and they're just desperately grabbing to try and prevent a big play. Like it's still really ticky-tack stuff and it's stuff that feels like it can be cleaned up and hopefully it will be moving forward. So that's my take on that. Final defensive things. Give them some credit for holding in the red zone late. They force a turnover on downs.
Weird fourth down though. I always remember I
Really weird
mentioned that.
play. Yeah,
Where
the
Connor Williams, the center, snaps the ball because the play clock is running out, but no one on Seattle was ready for the snap, and so you're
the
forcing like
Lions weren't
Gino.
ready either. They were just standing
Yeah,
around.
it just became backyard football for a second, and I mean Terrion covered Lockett well on that play. Like he forced a throw over out of the back of the end zone, so credit to him. But that was just very odd. There was a lot of just weird occurrences in this game. We should. So quickly, I'll mention Brandon Joseph. I didn't like. He's your fourth safety. He was starting in this game because everyone else is injured. I thought he was okay, but there was a few times where his angles, in tackling, just weren't good. Branch should be back for the Cowboys game in a couple weeks, so that'll be much needed reinforcement because
Branch
that's a
was
bit like
definitely missed in this game.
yeah.
Like you could tell in some of the tackling stuff.
The other thing that is more unfortunate to talk about, time might be running out for James Houston. He was brutal. He had one pressure and two offsides in this game, and he just was not a factor at all rushing the passer, which is what he's here to do. We said that this coaching staff loves versatility, and if you're not going to be versatile, you need to do one thing really well. And we said that he was so good as a pass rusher, it warranted a roster spot. Didn't see it in this game.
Yeah, he might end up being a great Lions Linsanity run up there with like Joseph Fourier in the annals of that category. Did he have two offsides in this game?
Yeah,
So more offsides than pressures.
can't
Not
happen.
good. Not good. Um, not a lot else to say there. Ben Neiman got some run at edge. Going to continue to be a talking point moving forward. We should close it out by saying the good things on defense. Two takeaways. Jack Campbell punching out the ball
Oh,
from DK Metcalf.
and you know what? Jack Campbell had a great game.
Yeah.
He was
Uh,
awesome,
I,
especially like I think it was the first play defensively where they run outside with
oh
Walker,
yeah, yeah.
and Campbell's just a heat-seeking missile and stops it for a 3 yard loss. Heat-seeking missile and that Metcalf play, like he was everywhere.
Nice return on that one from Carlton Davis. Kirby Joseph trucks Gino. Speaking of which, he had an interception to finally close out a very long and winding game. Heck of a play on that one.
What? Yeah,
This
incredible catch.
this was sort of the Kirby experience with the issues on one drive where he blows the sack that needs to be made, blows the tackle on a 25-yard Kenneth Walker run, but then gets the interception. So in the end, kind of evens out. One final note on this. Seattle throws a touchdown to A.J. Barner, Michigan Wolverine, first career touchdown. Shout out to him for that. Otherwise, Seattle has a lot of yards in this game. I think they crest 500, but a lot of score effects drives. The last two in particular, a lot of stuff. The Lions are playing off a little bit. Seattle ran quite a few plays. Wasn't the greatest game of all time, but also I thought their first half was pretty good defensively, and then things kind of spiraled. Not what you want to see, but I do think it was better than the last 2 years. So, hooray for incremental progress.
Yeah, and I think going back to Kirby, if you can just ban him from playing within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, he is going to be the best safety in the league because he cannot play man coverage very well. He's not really good against the run, but boy, is he good at playing that deep middle and just reading the quarterback's eyes and locking down anything that's thrown past 20 yards. He's now second in the league in interceptions behind Xavier McKinney and so Kirby had in each of his first 2 years had 4 interceptions. He's already up to 3 in 4 weeks this year, so we're on good pace for him to at least have a career high. And I mean, a prediction of mine is looking pretty good as well so far. Aside from that, I don't know. I think I'm a little bit more down on this game just because this was one that you figured the defense in particular would have circled on their calendars and saying, we need to have a good performance here. And it was just okay. So I
Yeah,
kind of I'm a little bit more critical of them because this is one you had to have a good game in. So
disappointing, but at the same time, I think sometimes bad matchups can be bad matchups.
yeah,
And it is what it is, and you got to tip your cap to some of the plays Seattle made. So, special team stuff and game three specifically, but special teams in particular, Jake Bates, little nerve-wracking on those extra points.
So I don't know if it was like I was very torn on this because it seemed like part of it was also just like the camera angle because
Yeah,
but Bates I mean he made one I think it was a 48-yard extra point after the
which was
JMO.
big.
Yep, huge and to keep it a 15-point game instead of a 14-point lead, right? And I mean he made all his kicks. They did look like they were trending a little right towards the upright, but I mean they still went in, so I won't complain as long as they're going through.
Yeah, a little weaker Jack Fox game, I thought, but oh well, what can you do? We don't have any concern there. The really big discussion point here is the end of the first half, which is both special teams and game theory stuff. I didn't really understand why they were pressing late in that first half. They get backed up real far. Seattle's got two timeouts. Eventually, they get in a position where, to me, it just felt like, you know what? Run the ball, run the clock out. Let's go to halftime. We're up 14 points. We don't want to risk giving Seattle any time to get a field goal before halftime. Just felt like they got too aggressive there and end up having to put the defense back out on the field with 25 seconds. I don't know what you felt about that. It just felt unnecessary.
Yeah, like if you want to be aggressive, you try it, but like you're so backed up there that and the other thing too, and this goes back to the conversation about the Lions playing too far off. You gifted Seattle 15 yards at the end of the half to allow them to try a 62-yard field goal.
Yeah,
That cannot happen.
specifically 7 yards with 5 seconds left, where it seemed
Yeah.
like the Lions thought that they were just going to throw a Hail Mary with 5 seconds left.
Yeah, you like they called their patented one man rush with 15 seconds left, except they didn't cover anything underneath. So, see, like, you cannot give up 15. Like, that's the type, like, we have Dallas coming up in 2 weeks. If that's against Dallas, that's 3 points because we know Brandon Aubrey will hit that
Yeah.
from 62. There are kickers. The kickers are have stronger legs than ever. These are not plays that you can just give away for free. I don't care how scared you are of a Hail Mary. You just have to like press a little bit. Like you cannot play 15 yards off.
Yeah, weirdly aggressive on offense, weirdly passive on defense there. And then you have the actual field goal itself. Why did they put Khalil Dorsey back there?
What happened to Khalif Raymond? Like,
That's just I don't really know why they did that. That you're not going to get a kick six. This is the NFL. Like, come on. It just the end of the half. Just go to halftime. It just felt like they were so resistant to the idea that the half was going to be over. That they
I'll
kept
defend
fighting.
that and saying you might as well try. You don't really have anything to lose by trying to return that, but at least put your best returner back there.
Fair. And then on that note, they get a penalty. Was it like a face mask or a horse collar or something like that? It would have put the ball at the Detroit 37 for one untimed down. How do we feel about declining that one?
I think they were going to take a knee anyways, so you're not going to try a Hail Mary in that spot. You might as well take a half.
Yeah, I don't have a major issue with it, but it did kind of feel weird after they were doing so much to keep the half going to then just
Hmm.
throw in the towel and head to the locker room. So that was kind of weird, but ultimately not consequential. So that's about all I had. It's a messy game. A lot of stuff happened, a lot of talking points coming out of it, but they got a win. 15-point win. I think I don't remember what the spread was, but it was a lot less than 15. So good teams win, great teams cover. You're 3-1 at the bye week. Only so much to complain about overall.
Well, 13. Don't forget about the safety at the end.
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
But yeah,
42-29.
yeah. So the Lions cover the spread. It's the first time one of their games has hit the over, which I mean, with this offense, probably should have happened sooner. But alas, it was good to see the offense return to form. The defense continues to be a bit of a work in progress, but again, it's one of those things where you have so many like new pieces that you just want to see them improve throughout the season, and they have so far. So moving on, just around the NFL, the Vikings were destroying the Green Bay Packers until they weren't, and that suddenly became a very close second half thriller of a game, almost akin to Georgia and Alabama over the weekend as well. Did you catch any of that game?
I saw parts of it. I was watching Red Zone, so they'd show me stuff. I mean, it was on the TV here in Michigan, so I could have watched the whole thing if I wanted to, but I was watching Red Zone, so I saw snippets. I will say that the big first half lead, not even like the Lions Niners lead, rest in peace, but the even bigger like 21 nothing in the first quarter, dangerous, dangerous lead in football. There is so much time remaining in the game, and they get up by a huge margin, but a couple miscues and suddenly it can become a game and you take your foot off the gas, you get a little tight, and honestly, when they got up that much, that was kind of what I was expecting, was it was going to end up being close because teams just end up relenting a little bit in those situations. And the Vikings handed the Packers a lifeline in that game. Didn't they muff a punt in like the 10-yard line
I think so,
right at
yeah.
the end of the first half, gives Green Bay their first touchdown when that should have been the end of the half, up 28 nothing. They throw an interception later in the game. They had I think, a fumble as well, like in their own territory, that gives Green Bay another short field. Like they absolutely let the Packers back in that game, but their lead was in the end too wide for the Packers to have come back from. But they did their best job to let Green Bay back in it.
Well, the difference in that game ends up being two Packers missed field goals, one of which was 37 yards.
Brandon
So
McManus, future Packer.
it might be, but the thing like Jordan Love was had a weird game in his return. He threw three interceptions, I think, which one of them was not his fault. It was like double tipped off a receiver. It happens, but those kind of leads, we saw this in week 4 with the Lions and Packers last year, where when the Packers are down, Jordan Love's just going to throw it deep, and whatever happens, happens. And the Packers turned into jump ball merchants for a bit there. Jaden Reed, surprisingly, the best jump ball threat they have, and he's not a big guy, so that was a little surprising. But I don't know, the Packers, both teams are just, they're weird to me because the Vikings, I refuse to buy into this 4-0. Like I refuse to buy into the theory that they're legit. I think they're a good team. I think they might even be a playoff team based on starting 4-0. They probably will be. I don't see them as Super Bowl contenders though. And the Packers, I Jordan Love, they will live and die by Jordan Love, and I don't know, the way he throws the football, so he literally just gets too cute every single drop back because he refuses to throw a normal pass.
It is the most frustrating sort of watch experience. Like, why does he keep doing that? What is up with that back foot? It Be normal. I don't know what to say in beyond that. Like, this is it, everyone was making the jokes about wearing the Favre jersey and then the Favre homage, and including the jumping pass. He just feels like a quarterback who decided to make all of his throws an attempt to get on like a YouTube highlight reel. And this is my big thing in hockey as well, with guys who are big into dekes and things like that, is it's cool to have skill, but the skill has to lead to something. The deke has to produce a positive offensive chance for your team. If you're just stick handling and then you get eventually rubbed off the puck and nothing really comes of it, I don't care. It's not useful. It's not productive. And there are times when the Love jumping pass and back foot thing is helpful, but there's a lot of times where it really could have just been done normally. And the tendency to get into it gets him into weird situations. And so through 2 games, he has 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Kind of a chaos quarterback so far this season. And it's going to be interesting to see if how he can kind of get back to a more normal and comfortable manner of play moving forward. Obviously, this was the first game back from the injury, so we'll see. But maybe not the smoothest start to the year for the Packers overall, and the Vikings. I don't really know what to say. Darnold looked pretty good in this game again. Did throw the one interception. To me, the big story is just that defense, because they've given up, I think, 59 points through 4 games, one of the lowest marks in the NFL. I don't know what's going on there, and I don't think we're really going to find out until the Lions see them, because I don't anticipate the Jets torching that defense in London this week, but hey, you never know.
Yeah, week 7 is going to be a very interesting game because the Lions under Campbell have matched up well against the Vikings, but it's going to be. I think Kirby Joseph is definitely drooling at the prospect that depending on what happens with Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy out there in Minnesota, as soon as next year, the Lions' three division rivals could all have quarterbacks that are agents of chaos, which bodes well for a turnover of someone who can read quarterbacks and take away the deep pass like Kirby can. So it's going to be the quarterback situation in the NFC North is very interesting because you have Darnold and Goff who are more safer quarterbacks, more system like quarterbacks, and then you have Love and Caleb Williams who every snap is an adventure. And for Love, it's been more good than bad. For Williams, so far, it's been more bad than good. Those will probably both average out a little bit, unless Jordan Love just is a good starting quarterback, which still unproven. It's still not sold. Like we are not seeing the Jordan Love that we saw down the stretch and in the playoffs last year. That's for sure. So if that Jordan Love comes back, okay, then we can have a conversation about him being one of the top however many quarterbacks in the league. But until then, he just seems very chaotic.
Yeah, the Packer offense was really in a groove late last season through the playoffs, and they haven't found that groove yet necessarily. And part of that is Love missing some passes. Part of it is just generally not necessarily on the completely the same page at the moment. But it's a long season. We'll see what happens. Vikings are a fascinating team, and they're going to be coming off a bye week when the Lions see them. That'll be a giant matchup.
And it's
But
in Minnesota, I'm pretty sure. That game's going to suck.
hey, it'll be indoors. That
Yeah.
that helps Jared Goff. So Bears got a win this week against the beaten down, bruised carcass of the Los Angeles Rams. They are now 2-2 on the season. Neither win this year looks at all pretty, but they're 500. They're still in the hunt.
In this game, there's two things. Ref talk was going on very aggressively on Rams Twitter for a missed roughing the passer on the final interception, where Matthew Stafford nearly gets decapitated by a Bears defender as he gets hit as he throws. It's a blatant head contact, not called, and it ends the game. On a more positive note, good for DeAndre Swift to have a good game, a desperately needed bounce back game because the Rams are beat up. They do not have a good run defense right now, and the Bears are not a good running team. Swift is probably not going to have a very fun year, but this was a good game for him individually. He definitely showed the explosiveness that he has. That's why the Bears signed him. So good for him. Caleb, still a mixed bag. His touchdown pass to DJ Moore he showed good anticipation on that one, so I'll give him credit for that. But he's still looking very much like a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, still a work in progress for him. Something that again we can't say about Jaden Daniels as the Commanders torched the Arizona Cardinals, and we're talking about teams we have seen formerly. I expect Washington will come back down to earth because they have to, but he sure looks like a franchise quarterback to me. Very early on, but hard to have really done better than what he's done thus far.
Yeah, well, the Cliff Kingsbury offensive coordinator there. We will see what happens after Week 10 when Kingsbury always falls off. I will say, there's been Lions fans have been coping a little bit with the fact that every time they play someone, they get blown out the next week, and they're. Do you give any credence to the post Lions hangover?
I don't know. We have a decent bit of evidence on it now. We'll have to monitor Seattle next week. If it is true that there's a post Lions hangover, then what is also true is that the next week after that they have a big bounce back because I believe the Rams won in 2 weeks after the Lions beat them over San Francisco. And then this week, Tampa Bay, 2 weeks after they played the Lions, absolutely just throttled the Eagles. Philadelphia, I don't know, man. Weird stuff going on with that team, just like the end of last year. But the Bucks, Denver game notwithstanding, look pretty darn good.
That Eagles defense looks rough. And I'll give their offense a break because no AJ Brown, no Devonta Smith. But yeah, Darius Slay seems to be entering the twilight of his career. Quinyon Mitchell had a few nice moments, but he's still a rookie corner, and those rookie corners tend to get picked on a little bit. It's their front has not been as dominant as it once was.
Well, that was
It,
the sort of the theory of their team was that they drafted Jalen Carter and they're supposed to have these monsters up front, and it's just not happening. The bigger issue for me with that team is just the vibes continue to be very bad. I don't know if you saw the thing, I think it was yesterday, about Darius Slay on some like podcast laughing about CJ Gardner Johnson talking trash and getting cooked in that game, but
mhm.
seemed bad in terms of what a teammate should be doing during the week. I watch, I've listened to the St. Brown podcast and like Amon-Ra's always locked in, always going to defend his guys, like very not, cards tight to the vest. Like if you're going to have a podcast during the season, that's how you have to do it. And that the Slay clip did not seem good. And it just going back to the end of last year, a lot of bad things going on with this Eagles team.
Yeah, and I know CJ Gardner Johnson has quickly devolved into one of the most hateable characters in the NFL for fans. I know Lions fans grew increasingly frustrated with him once he came back from his injury with all the smack talk in the NFC Championship game when it was 21-7 in the second quarter. He starts waving goodbye to the Niners fans. It's like there's still more than half of a game to play here. What are we doing? And he's there's an entire NFL hater watch on Twitter has been posting every touchdown he's allowed this season, and it's like, oh, that's 4 in 4 games for CJ Gardner Johnson. It's just the vibes are not
He
good.
talks a big game for a guy that is a decent player, but you have to be better than that, I think, to warrant the sort of trash talking that he does.
Yeah, and I get that, trash talk is a big part of the game as someone who plays in the secondary because, a lot of things are not in your favor. And so you have to kind of have that mentality where you are kind of taking on the whole world because things are not going to go your way a lot and you have to be able to deal with that. But yeah, Philly's not in a good place right now at all.
No, and the Cowboys, which I think we'll talk about more next week, uh, as the future opponent, but with a bye week in between, it's a little ways off. But the Cowboys didn't look at all convincing against the Giants in the Thursday night game, and now you got Philly. I don't know if Washington's the best team in the division, but I do know that they're playing best at the moment. Long season to go, but it has been a bit of a dud from the two NFC East teams that we expect to be the standard bearers in that division.
Yeah, and for the Cowboys specifically, they did coming into the Giants game on Thursday, they had the worst run defense in the league, and then they randomly decided they were good again. But now they've lost Micah Parsons and Demarcus Lawrence for at least a few weeks, presumably through the Lions game. And if those two are missing, the Lions are going to maul them up front, and it will not be pretty. Osa Odigizua is going to be in there all by himself trying to save the world on defense, and we'll see what happens with that team. But yeah,
Who was
Cowboys.
were they the team playing Amani Oruwariye?
Yeah, we had an Amani Oruwariye sighting, and he got a game-winning interception against the Giants. Which, man, what a weird! And what's funny is he was signed off of the Giants practice squad, so a little bit of I guess a revenge game for Amani. If Amani Oruwariye has a revenge game against the Lions in Week 7, I might be inconsolable for a little bit. That will
Just
not be fun.
justifiably so.
Yeah. Do you have any other notes? Actually, I will say one quick last note around the NFL. Shout out the Denver Broncos for winning a football game with Bo Nix throwing 60 passing yards. Caleb Williams no longer holds the crown for the most fraudulent quarterback performance in a win. Bo Nix, congratulations. He had -7 passing yards in the first half, I'm pretty sure. Uh, that somehow Aaron Rodgers, the conditions were awful in MetLife that day, but shout out the Broncos defense for stepping up and stopping Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I think that game was one of the funniest games in recent weeks, especially at halftime when both quarterbacks passing line was simply unfathomable. Even the final lines are funny on the Broncos side, but at halftime, both lines were extremely funny. A 10-9 final score. I don't know what to say. That one was like the Titans Dolphins game on Monday night. Like if you're
Ugh.
seen watching that game, you need a good explanation as to what you were doing that merited choosing that game to watch. Just a nasty game, and now I'm very curious to see how the Jets look against the Vikings in that game on Sunday in London because they haven't really played well at all this season. Doesn't look like a major contender of any sort, but Vikings are now at the point where you kind of expect them to have a letdown week at some point, and maybe the Jets could be that team. We'll find out.
If there's any week for it to happen, we know that London games can be wacky when teams travel overseas. So, Jets have a good defense. Maybe Sauce Gardner can have a legacy game against Justin Jefferson. I don't know.
Yeah, the Lion Falcon London game is still one of the all-time chaos games, with the missed field goal that didn't count, so they back Prater up and then he makes it to win the game. Final note I had on this week, black jerseys and the blue helmets looked pretty sharp if you ask me.
I think it's a win, and the next time we see the black jerseys, I believe, will be against the Bills in Week 15, and the Lions will have the blue pants for those ones.
That'll be an interesting combo. I kind of think the black, all black works better, but I'd have to see the blue pants in action.
And well, my last note: Devonte Adams has requested a trade from the Raiders following a Antonio Pierce liking a post saying that Devonte Adams has played his last snap in Las Vegas. One of the weirdest coach wide receiver drama situations I have seen in the last few years. So it seems like Devonte Adams will be traded in the next few weeks. It's reported that the package that they are seeking is a second rounder plus additional compensation. Big problem there is the money that Devonte Adams is owed, but it seems like they'll figure that out and he will find a new home in the next few weeks. So we'll see where he goes, and I feel like the favorites got to be either the Jets or the Chiefs, but which is both of those have equal levels of like doom scrolling a little bit. But if he goes to the Chiefs, NFL Twitter as a whole will be in a bad place for a bit.
Hey, Jets goes there, not our problem.
Yeah.
Even the Chiefs are in the AFC, but Jets in particular, not really our problem.
We'll
So
uh we'll see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. It's fine.
there you go.
So that'll be it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. Be sure to follow the show, follow us on social media, and we'll be back next week to preview the Cowboys game. In the meantime, enjoy the bye week, enjoy all the other games around the NFL, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.